After giving it a lot of thought over the weekend, I really believe the Bruins might be making a mistake by not naming David Pastrnak as the next captain.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked Beat. Today is Monday, August 4th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day, no matter what the sport. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Now, on Friday's podcast, we discussed how the Bruins likely will go with a 2A approach for this upcoming season, with Charlie McAvoy and David Pastrnak wearing the A's. And I titled that podcast, No Captain, No Problem. But the more that I thought about it over the weekend, the more I'm convinced that they should just go ahead and name David Pastrnak captain. We're going to touch on that, as well as look at some NHL.com projections for relevant Bruins players this season and their top 5 prospects list. Before we get into all that, though, quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, not to be confused with the UCLA Bruins, of course. That's on Blue Sky, X, Threads, Instagram, even TikTok these days. And you can find me, my hockey thoughts and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I'm a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I have been covering this team and the NHL for various outlets for about 20 years now. Let's begin by just touching on why NHL teams need captains. It kind of begins with leadership and accountability. It's more than just a ceremonial C on the jersey. The captain serves as an emotional compass for the team. When games get tough or tensions rise in the locker room, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. Players look to the captain for composure, direction, motivation. Captains address the team during intermission, lead practices by example, and are often the first to take accountability when the team falls short. You can have multiple leaders on a team, and Charlie McAvoy and David Pastrnak are both core players, leaders on this team, the longest serving players on this team. The only holdovers from the 2019 run to the Stanley Cup final. So both are going to play important roles, but you kind of need that one guy. You talk about addressing the team during intermission. And if you have that 2A approach, like who decides who's going to address the team on any given night? If you have a clear hierarchy, then you eliminate that awkwardness or that who's going to step up question tonight, or stepping on another guy's toes by one guy taking on more than the other. Captains also play a crucial role in communication. They bring locker room concerns to the coaching staff, convey the coach's vision to the players. Without a clear leader, that communication can become fragmented. And when you have a new head coach coming in, like Marco Sturm, again, that clear hierarchy is important. Sturm to Pastrnak to the assistants, and then the rest of the guys setting the example. Whether it's a rebuilding year or a playoff push, every team needs someone who defines the standard. David Pastrnak stepped up huge last season with a massive performance when the team was on a bit of a downswing. They set the tone for work ethic, preparation, how to represent the organization on and off the ice. That consistency builds identity and cohesion, right? Something especially important for evolving rosters. They're also the public face of the franchise, usually. There are some exceptions where it's kind of a lesser known player, not a star player necessarily, but from speaking to media to participating in community events, captain is often the most visible player in the organization, and having a clear leader provides fans and media with a steady voice and gives the team a strong, marketable identity. I've said so many times on this podcast and just in conversation that the Bruins, the NHL, I believe have failed David Pastrnak in a few ways by not making him more of a face of the franchise. I don't know whether it's kind of a communication barrier or his strong accent or what it is, but he is the kind of player who, if he was from rural Ontario, he would be marketed to the nines and pushed out there as the face of the franchise, face of the league, one of the most consistent elite offensive talents of this generation. He's led the Bruins in scoring for 5 straight seasons, one of the most dynamic, marketable players in the league. Fans don't just come to see the Bruins. They come to see Pasta. On any given night, he could put in a world-class performance. And if the captaincy is about embodying the franchise, he's already doing it. He's not one of those stoic leaders, but he brings infectious enthusiasm to the rink. And that energy helps diffuse pressure, builds team chemistry, especially among younger players. He's also shown maturity through tragedy, returning to form after personal loss, showing leadership during last season's adversity. He's committed long-term. He has buy-in. Of course, he signed that long-term deal when things were a bit brighter, but he's not just part of the present. He is their future. He is their building block. And the captaincy should go to someone who will be around to lead the team through this next chapter. Now, Charlie McAvoy is, of course, also signed, but there's something to be said about Pasta's longest tenured reign and the fact that they went so naturally from Zdeno Chara to Patrice Bergeron, handed it immediately to Brad Marchand after his whole history with the Bruins and in the NHL not being, a perfect track record, to not immediately hand it off to David Pastrnak, who is seemingly next in line, does a disservice to the impact that he has made on this franchise. Whether it's scoring a big overtime winner, Game 7 against the Toronto Maple Leafs, creating momentum with the rush, he delivers when the Bruins need it most. And leadership isn't always vocal. It's about moments. And Pasta consistently shows up in those big moments. Early in his career, he was a fun-loving young star. Today, he's matured into a respected veteran who still has that joyful spark, but with added responsibility, both on and off the ice. He's married. He has a child. He supported teammates through tough times, praises rookies, takes ownership when things don't go right. And that evolution mirrors the kind of player you want wearing the C. And not to mention his journey to the NHL to begin with. David Pastrnak did not come from great financial means. He lost his father in 2013 to cancer. He's dedicated his hockey career to his father. And without a doubt, his father would be proud of his son's career accomplishments to date. He was using budget equipment growing up as a kid and was able to put all that together into becoming one of the greatest players of this generation. For me, the more that I thought about it, a team without a captain risks drifting without a defined voice or vision. This is no disrespect to Charlie McAvoy, who very much is captain material and likely will be the captain at some point if he outlasts David Pastrnak. But for a franchise with the legacy of the Boston Bruins, it's time to pass that torch. And again, there was a clean passing from Chara to Bergeron to Marchand. And now it's time to pass it to David Pastrnak, a superstar with heart, charisma, and the commitment to carry this team forward. Just give him the C. He is ready. Forget this two-headed leadership approach. Let's go with Pasta. You have a fine assistant in Charlie McAvoy, maybe Nikita Zadorov, and Elias Lindholm or Hampus Lindholm. Wear the A's as well, but give Pasta the C. He is more than worthy. Coming up, we are going to discuss NHL.com projections for the Bruins in terms of fantasy rankings, as well as the top 5 prospects according to the league's website. Do you ever wish that managing your money felt just a bit easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. We took a look at our finances and saw how much we were spending on fast food, coffee, streaming services, and we were able to cut that down to what we needed most and saw some great savings as a result. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Thanks so much again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Everydayers know that each new episode automatically added to your podcast feeds and on YouTube. August will be a bit of a slower month. Still going to be pumping out podcasts regularly, not necessarily every single day, but training camp just around the corner. And anytime new Bruins news drops, you'll know that I will be right on top of it. All right, so over the weekend, NHL.com, they started their 32 in 32 series, looking at all 32 teams and projections for the upcoming season. And they have David Pastrnak's point total at under 100, which would be the first time that's happened in the past several seasons. He's been on a nice streak here of 100-point seasons dating back to 2022-23, 113, 110, and 106 this past season. Yes, there's some drop-off there, but they're projecting that he will come in at 94 points. He is one of 3 Bruins with at least 3 straight 100-point seasons. Bobby Orr and Phil Esposito being the other 2. Orr had 6. Esposito had 5 in a row. He leads the NHL in goals and ranks 5th in points since the start of 2022-23. But they're saying with Brad Marchand traded to Florida last season, Pastrnak is still a top 10 overall fantasy option and Boston's clear-cut projected leading scorer with a high fantasy floor. Now, Marchand's departure not very relevant for Pastrnak as they didn't really play much together last season. He was still able to get 106 points. I'd be surprised if he dips below 100, and if so, that far, like a 6 points under 500. He did have a slow start last year, but one of the best players down the stretch, led the NHL in goals, 5-on-5, assists, points. Like, if they can get their power play going a little bit, he could even improve on last year's totals. And part of that will be Morgan Geekie's progression. After scoring 22 goals in 180 NHL games, he had 50 in 153 over the past 2 seasons with the Bruins. Signed a 6-year contract after setting career highs in goals, assists, and points. 57 in 77 games last season. Quietly tied for second in the league in 5-on-5 goals last season. And he, along with Pasta, could have an even higher ceiling if power play point production, he only had 9 last season, improves. So those two guys will be very tied together this season. And if Elias Lindholm can come up and keep that momentum going that they displayed, that trio displayed at the end of last season, that could be a real nice first line for Boston. I actually have Morgan Geekie on one of my fantasy teams. Even though it's a cap league, I'm sticking with him because I'm hoping that he will ride the success he had alongside our boy Pasta. They're projecting 25 wins for Jeremy Swayman. Of course, he had a terrible season last year. 892 save percentage last season, down from 910 in his career. He had 55 starts, faced 30 shots in 21 of them last season. They did miss the playoffs, but Swayman remains in NHL.com's top 25 goalie rankings. And if he goes back to form, he should be back in the top 10. And I've mentioned before, everydayers will remember goaltending, coaching success very much tied together. And if Jeremy Swayman can get back to that 910 save percentage, which is above league average, if he can even get to league average, then that will be a big benefit to Marco Sturm and the rest of the Boston Bruins. And of course, he will benefit from having Hampus Lindholm back on the blue line. He missed most of last season. And Charlie McAvoy, who was limited to 50 games after sustaining a season-ending shoulder surgery during the Four Nations faceoff. He's yet to reach the 80-game mark in any of his 8 NHL seasons, but he is productive when healthy, tied for 18th among defensemen in points per game over the past 4 seasons. He should be a top 30 fantasy defenseman with the ceiling of regaining Boston's top power play spot from Mason Lohrei, and could challenge his previous career high in points, which was 56 in 2021-22. Elias Lindholm, they're projecting as another bounce-back candidate. After having 47 points in 82 games in his first season with the Bruins, could have an opportunity to play on the top line, first power play with Pastrnak under Marco Sturm. And especially if James Higgins does not play in the NHL this season, he does have an 82-point season to his name in 2021-22. So it's possible and likely that he will hit a new high as a member of the Boston Bruins this upcoming season. And that will be a real important factor in the Bruins bouncing back here in 2025-26. When it comes to a Bruins breakout candidate, they are picking Mason Lohrei, who led Bruins defensemen with 33 points, including a team-high 15 power play assists in his first full NHL season. He's proved he can be a standout offensively and could play alongside Charlie McAvoy on the top pairing. He was elevated into an expanded role due to injuries, averaging 21 minutes and 18 seconds of ice time per game after the Four Nations faceoff compared to 1940 before. He ranked highly at his position in both mid-range goals and power play skating distance. With McAvoy healthy as his defensive partner, NHL.com writes, at even strength and his own emergence to play on the man advantage, he should set career highs in goals, assists, and points to go along with 100 plus blocked shots this season. So if you're looking for good value defensively in fantasy leagues, you want to take a look at Mason Lohrei. So that's some projections for the Bruins this coming season. They also have Matt Poitras projected at 40 points. So that would indicate a fairly regular role for him. 45 points from Casey Middlestat. Would love to see him get more to the 50 to 55 range that he had in Colorado. Hampus Lindholm with 30. And if you're looking for a hits specialist, Tanner Jeannot will be your guy. Now, what did NHL.com have to say about Boston's top prospects and how they're ranked? We'll look at the top 5 here as the podcast continues. It will come as no surprise that the top prospect for the Boston Bruins, according to NHL.com, and I would be shocked if this wasn't true in all prospect rankings, is James Higgins, selected with the number 7 pick in the 2025 NHL draft. First pick in the top 10 since 2011 when they took Dougie Hamilton at number 9. His offensive upside addresses a key need after the Bruins averaged only 2.7 goals last season. Likely returning to Boston College, potentially making his debut after his college season ends, maybe in April. Don Sweeney said they feel he's a guy that can generate offensively, will continue to round out his game, 200-foot game, but wants to play in every situation, has produced at NHL at every level, and they were so happy to get him, and his projected NHL arrival is full-time next season. Now, they have Fabian Lysell still at number 2 on their top 5 rankings. He made his NHL debut on December 28th, was recalled on March 22nd, had his first NHL point with an assist in a 7-2 win over the Devils on the 8th, and his first 8th of April, I should say, and his first goal in a 4-1 win at Pittsburgh on April 13th. He's been mostly stuck in the American Hockey League and could very well continue with Providence before making another appearance in Boston. Back in April, he said he has to make decisions quicker. You don't have time to hesitate with the puck or without the puck. You have to move your feet at all times and have the courage to try to get inside. He's got a high offensive upside, but those other parts of his game are keeping him back a bit. And I would arguably put Fraser Minten over from him. He was traded from Toronto last season. He's got 5 points in 25 NHL games since making his debut with the Maple Leafs on October 11th, 2023. Second-round pick in 2022. He played in each of Boston's final 6 games and scored a goal on April 8th. He could find more of a role in Boston after Sweeney said he'd be open to younger players earning a spot out of training camp. Of course, there's going to be a lot of competition for that with all the signings in the bottom 6. They have Dan Lockmellis in there at number 4. Got a taste of pro hockey with a stint in Providence. Had 1 assist in 4 games during the Calder Cup playoffs before leaving to play in the World Championships, where he had 6 points in 7 games. He could be called up at some point this season. Will Zellers is number 5 on the list. USHL Player of the Year. USHL Forward of the Year. All USHL first team this past season. 44 goals. Led the USHL among all qualified skaters. And he's going to go to college at North Dakota. 19-year-old with huge offensive upside, but needs to develop defensively. I think if I'm ranking here, I go Higgins 1, obviously, Minten at 2, maybe Lockmellis 3, and then Lysell and Zellers. But I think upside Zellers might have more than Lysell at this point. This is going to be a huge season for Fabian Lysell, and if he can't come out of training camp with the spot locked down, that's going to be a real, just only going to raise more eyebrows and question marks as to whether this team can count on him to become a regular NHLer. They have 3 questions on NHL.com facing the Bruins. Is there enough around David Pastrnak? 106 points. Tied for 3rd in the NHL with Leon Draisaitl and behind Nathan McKinnon, Nikita Kucherov. They've added forward Victor Arvidsson. Still some questions about who is going to score on this team, and they're really counting on Morgan Geekie, maybe not sustaining that 33-goal season, but at least scoring 25. Will Jeremy Swayman rebound? That's another huge question mark. 22, 29, and 7. They're projecting 25 wins. 2-8-1 in his final 11 starts, allowing at least 4 goals 7 times. He did miss training camp, looked a lot better at the World Championships, so I think we'll get a reinvigorated Jeremy Swayman to begin the season, and that could help Marco Sturm bring back the Bruins' way, which is their second question. The Bruins struggled defensively. They need a healthy Hampus Lindholm, healthy Charlie McAvoy, and a guy like Swayman to really find his game. All that's available on NHL.com if you're interested. The big takeaway from today's episode is David Pastrnak should be the next captain of the Boston Bruins. I understand the kind of approach of kind of wanting to wait and see, allowing Marco Sturm time to evaluate the players, but he should be afforded the same courtesy that Brad Marchand was by just immediately handing him the C. He is the longest tenured Bruin, one of the best Bruins offensively, like ever. He's on track to be the best ever if he continues on this trajectory and remains a member of the Boston Bruins through the remainder of his career. And to not have him as captain and not name him captain immediately, kind of, I don't want to say insulting, but a bit disrespectful, I would say, to not just name him captain to begin this season. I understand Charlie McAvoy is well qualified, but Pasta is the face of the franchise and deserves to be captain. All right, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Please join in on the conversation on the YouTube comments or on social media at Locked NHL Bruins on X, Blue Sky, Instagram. Love to hear from you and what you think about the captaincy, the projections, and Boston's top 5 prospects. I hope you're all doing well, taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other, and we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.